Hi guys, welcome back to Skincare Anarchy. This is Ekta, and wow, do I have a guest for you guys today. This line is everywhere on Instagram, social media. I have been a huge fan since I first saw it a few years ago, and it's so surreal that I get to interview the founder. So without further ado, I want to introduce you guys to Indy Lee, who is the founder of Indy Lee Skincare. So welcome to the show, Indy. I'm so glad you're here.
I'm so grateful to be here. Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
It's my honor. I would love to get started by talking about your career and the past and what led to this amazing skincare line.
Sure. Most people at this point know I didn't start in beauty. My background is actually in finance. I was very blessed to have an incredible career with HBO, yes, home box office, back when Sopranos and Sex and the City were all the rage. And now
Ooh.
and now I've aged myself. But but I
Okay.
left because I realized I really didn't love finance anymore, and I wanted to spend more time with my children, and really got back to basics. I have a very large greenhouse in my backyard and was growing edible flowers and starter plants for various different schools. And in 2008, I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis
Oh wow.
and realized that a lot of my ailments that I had had were autoimmune and could no longer work in the greenhouse or the farm that I kind of put under production. But I'm a type A personality. I believe everything happens for a reason. And my
Yeah.
sister announced she was pregnant. So I started to make some products for her to unveil at her baby shower. Never, ever in my wildest dreams did I think that that would be like the start of something.
Yeah.
And despite everybody said, "Oh my gosh, this is what you should do." And I'm like, it was 2008. People weren't really thinking about that. They were very interested in organic food and making, where their food source came from, but they
Yeah.
really weren't thinking about beauty. And I was like, no, there's no way. Clean beauty, natural, all natural, for babies. Come on.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's interesting. The universe was trying to tell me a sign. And so, about a month after the baby shower, when I shared all those products that I made for my sister using some of the ingredients I was growing in my backyard, I started to lose my vision.
Mm.
And went immediately to my internist and said something is up, and he immediately sent me for an MRI, and 45 minutes later he called and said, "You need to come in."
Yeah.
And I said, "Fine, what is it?" He said, "We'll go through it when you get here." And I said, "Peter, I know that's never a good sign. So just tell me what it is before I start
Yeah.
Googling, and I'll see you in a few minutes." And I said,
Yeah.
"My keys are in my hand." And he said, "You have a brain tumor." I said, "I'll see you in 15 minutes."
Oh, wow.
And,
Wow.
that was November 4th, 2008. And I will tell you, that was probably the most powerful, impactful day of my life, because it was the day that I realized up until that moment, I wasn't I was really a passenger in my life, and I wasn't an active participant. I'd like to say I was a check the boxer,
Yeah. Yeah. I hear you.
really going through my life checking the boxes and not really thinking about, what it meant to live. And I said, well, from this day forward, I'm going to live with purpose and passion and really be present. But I knew, honestly, I knew that something incredible was going to happen from
Yeah.
this. And by the time I got to the doctor's office, I said, "I'm in a great place. Don't worry. What is it?" And he said, "I don't know." It doesn't
Yeah.
look like cancer, and it wasn't. But he sent me to see specialists. Went up and down the East Coast. Was told I could have as little as 6 months to live, and really spend times getting my affairs in order and spending time with my children, who were very young at that point.
Oh,
And
gosh.
I would say, no, that's not the end. That's not how this is going to go. And it's
Yeah.
interesting, when I went to my neuroendocrinologist and I said, "How is this happening? Nobody in my family has anything like this." That's when he said, "We're seeing more and more of these things tied to the environment." I'm like, "Environment? I eat organic food out of my greenhouse.
Right.
I'm in great physical shape. What are you talking about?" And he said, "Well, yes, those are all part of your environment." He said, "Let me ask you a question. What do you put on your skin? What did your mother put on her skin when she was pregnant? We know babies are born with a toxic load." And that was like that light bulb, we call my awakening. And I said,
Yeah.
"Oh my gosh, here I was really thinking about what my next step in my life was." And everybody's saying I should start a line, and I was thinking, I'm not going to create a line for children. What are you talking about? And
Yeah.
that's when I realized this is much bigger and realized the lack of regulation. And I said, I'm going to find a doctor who's going to do surgery. I am going to create a line that's safe, that's effective, that looks beautiful on a shelf. And then I'm going to empower people to live their most authentic and healthiest life. And fortunately for me,
Wow.
I found a doctor who said, I'll do surgery. And I said, let's go. April 22nd, Earth Day, walked into the surgical suite, said, today is a great day to live. Put on some kick tush music.
Yeah.
And many hours when I woke up, I was able to see completely. And the doctor said, they got everything. Welcome to your life. And a
Wow.
month later, I turned on the website and I haven't really turned back.
Oh my
Can't
gosh.
even
Talk
believe it.
about inspiration. I mean, sheesh. Wow. I mean, first of all, massive kudos to you. I cannot imagine how scary that must have been initially. And then to have the courage to go through it with a positive mind and a positive outlook, that is phenomenal. So
Thank you.
really, hats off for that. That's beautiful.
Thank
And
you.
I completely agree with you. I think that was such an interesting question that your doctor asked about what you put on your skin. That's,
So,
yeah,
like actually modern and not the way doctors really thought at that point. And just
right,
to, I realized because the reason why I created products for my nephew was because I knew that, there really wasn't a lot of regulation, let's put it that way, going into it. And I wanted something that I felt safe and comfortable putting on my nephew's soon to be tush. And so I knew what was going on, but I didn't think of it in the grander picture, nor did I think that I could be someone who could start a line. Did I think, well, like, who am I to do that? Talk about imposter syndrome. Like, who am I? I'm an accountant.
yeah, yeah, I hear
And
you.
I think that's a lot when people said, "Oh, that's what you should do." When I was creating that little thing to just unveil at my sister's baby shower, that was all.
Yeah,
And I think I just didn't have the courage. And once I got the diagnosis, and doctor said it could have been something as simple as put on my skin. It was like that light bulb, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, okay, I
yeah,
get the sign. I understand. This is what I need to do." And they say ignorance is bliss because I really didn't look back. I just said,
yeah.
okay, let's do it. So while I
You
was
know,
waiting, while waiting
yeah.
to find a doctor, I was formulating.
Wow. Wow. I mean, so, that's the thing though, I noticed that when people go through things that are like it's true adversity, you don't have anything to lose at that point. And in those moments, unfortunate as they are, some of the most, enlightening moments occur, and
Mm-hmm.
I think, that's such a blessing that you had this like insight coming from this like, terrible thing that was going on. I mean, that's beautiful. So
Thank you.
I'm very, very impressed and very inspired that
Thank
you've
you.
been through this. Yeah, no. And I want to talk about, I want to dive into the line more because your line
Sure.
is, it's so beautiful. It's such a great skincare line. I know that every product is designed with so much, like I can just tell you've really mastered, the just being intricate and really focusing on what consumers need. So I want to talk to you about the whole process of that.
Sure.
Like where did you like start? Like where I know like, there's like formulas and like labs, but where did you really start?
I am. It's interesting. The first, they say you never forget your first. And my first was the coconut citrus scrub, which is still in the line today.
Oh,
When I was formulating, I was kitchen formulating. I was like, I wasn't using a lab. I was trying to figure it out on my own. And I had developed RA and I was taking chemotherapy. My skin was so dry, so itchy, and I really wanted something to help combat that dry skin and feel really hydrated and moisturized. So I created the coconut citrus scrub, and it did the trick. And I said, okay, then let's see what else do I need in my routine that I want that I'm not necessarily finding out there. So the first parts of our brand were really in the body care. And
yeah.
then, once I was able to start working with, I would say, a true chemist and a lab, that's when I start to go more into the facial products because that's stuff
Yeah.
that, you really need. Although, squalane was one of those things where I said, what does our skin produce naturally? Recognize it was part of your sebum. And that's when I said, let me come out with a squalane facial oil that's just squalane.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
otherwise, the rest I really needed I needed a chemist, but I I started with what was missing out of my routine and how can I get something that's effective and beautiful, and kind of took it from there.
I love that. And, I love that you did not leave science behind on this journey because,
Oh,
like when I remember when I first saw your CoQ10 toner,
uh-huh.
I was so impressed. I was like, this is awesome. Like I love that, the line is so focused on science, and I was super like geeking out, you know what I mean, from the science aspect,
I
looking
geek
up all
out
these
too.
papers. Yeah, I mean, it made me like as a consumer, not only did I appreciate that you were doing this, from the brand's perspective, but as a consumer, I felt like, wow, this is making me want to look up things, and the
And
research and
that's
the
it.
yeah,
Yeah, it
yeah,
can be very confusing. And I think in this, day and age, there's so much confusion, clean, green, natural, derived, what does it mean? Is it really worth it? Is it
yeah,
hype? Is it fear mongering? And it gets really scary. And you know what? The truth is, you you do you. I'm an 80/20 gal, but I wanted my skincare to be, to have some of the purest ingredients. I wanted them to be sourced sustainably. I wanted to make sure that we were manufacturing in a lab that had that same ethos as us. That's why we went and got Cosmos certified. And we think there are 14 products that are now Cosmos and growing.
wow,
And so for me, it was really about the science. How do
yeah,
we take nature and then use science to amplify it and
yes,
do
yes,
what's best for consumers,
right,
and not come from a sphere perspective, because you know what, there's no need.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
this whole thing is, are there chemicals in it? Yes, water is chemical, everything is a chemical, like,
Everything, yes,
oh my
exactly.
gosh, it drives me
Exactly.
insane.
Well,
I've been
see,
always saying,
that's the knowledge aspect, right? And I mean, it's like, you have to realize that for me, like when I was an influencer, not lying, like when I was exploring your, like I said, the CoQ10 toner,
mhm.
it actually inspired me to do a post as an influencer about the science behind it. And I realized like people, I got a lot of comments on that post, and they were like, "Oh, I had no idea." And I was like, see, like there's a lot of things in nature that are so untapped, and they're so,
Yeah.
I mean, for God's sakes, we got penicillin from nature, you know what I mean?
Exactly,
Like
exactly.
that's why I'm just not like, I have so much respect for dermatologists, I have so much respect for the medical professional, obviously I'm part of it, and I understand that we want everything that's like, proven by like 15 clinical studies, but it's like true innovation happens when someone, like for example, you as an entrepreneur take that step and say, you know what, we're going to try this and let's see what
Yeah.
happens. And when you
And
get real
that's it.
results,
Well, that's just it. For me, it's what I'm trying to say to consumers is, listen, you don't need to sacrifice anything by
yeah,
having this product, right? You're not losing out on efficacy. You can see the ingredients that we're using. We're using science, right? Science research.
yeah,
We're doing it in, in a CGMP lab. Our labs are Cosmos. Like we're going through this so that you don't need to, so you can feel confident. But at the same time, that doesn't mean that you can't mix and match. That doesn't mean that I'm afraid to use things that aren't natural or things that are synthetics. There's beautiful, clean synthetics out there. Listen,
yeah,
I took chemotherapy for years for my
yeah,
rheumatoid arthritis. I'm taking medication now. And you know what? We've got to get away from this fear mongering. I'm just giving you options
yeah,
and allowing you to make the choice that's best for you. I like to say,
absolutely.
I know the risk, I make the choice. And that's all I'm
Absolutely.
trying to do, is give consumers another lens to look at beauty through. And then they can
Yeah,
make the choice.
absolutely. And it's like, choice is freedom, and the more
100%.
options we have, that's true freedom. And I absolutely 100% agree with you, and another thing, I just want to say, especially with like autoimmune disorders, for anyone listening out there, like, those are extremely difficult disorders to treat. The medications are actually very harsh on the body. There's a lot of debate in the medical community about, the standard allopathic approach to treating
Yes.
things like rheumatoid arthritis or Hashimoto's or,
Yeah.
any autoimmune disorder. So, I've noticed in the last few years, people are finally understanding that there is value in, a holistic approach to everything.
100%,
You know what I mean?
100%. And that doesn't mean that when something doesn't work holistically, I'm not going to go to conventional, but I'm going to take a look and see what's available to me. And when it came into formulating skincare products, I looked and I said, there's so much beautiful, clean, green chemistry out there. Why not use it? Why not harness this? When you're using, you're getting salicylic acid and you can have it derived from wintergreen. Why not make that choice if it's effective? Same thing like glycolic from caviar lime. Why not use that? I'm not here to say one is right, one is wrong. I'm just going to share with you why I chose the ingredients that I chose.
Well, yeah, I mean, honestly, it makes total sense to me. And I know that there's a huge debate in the industry right now, especially everyone's talking about clean beauty versus green beauty versus, clinical grade skincare. And I'm sitting here thinking, like, in my head, I always think, well, if we want to talk about green beauty, we should focus more on the derivatives of, plant-based products, right? Like the plant-based things. And there's no shame in that. That doesn't mean that it's something that's just whipped up in a kitchen and has no, medical backing or scientific backing. No, it just means that we're going to nature and saying there must be something that exists in nature that can help us. And so I think it's a very interesting conversation. And especially, when I see brands such as yours that are so well crafted and that are really doing this the right way, it makes me, it really makes me want to like push, my medical colleagues in the direction of just open your mind. You know what I mean? Open the mind, think about it in a way that, so many years ago, we didn't know about so many therapies that are now approved that once again, restating what I said, they came from nature. So like, I love that. I really love that. Now, I want to move on and talk to you about like, I know you have a huge range in your line, and I love that. I think it's great because there's something, because there's something for everybody. But, one thing I just want to get your opinion on is right now there's a lot of talk about like minimalism in skincare and like all this stuff. So how do you like see that, in terms of like a consumer going onto your website and then trying to pick out like a routine from the
Really great question. And by the way, I'm all for it. I don't think you need to have the 20 zillion step. If that's what you're into, great, but I don't think you necessarily need to. And certainly age can play a part of it. Genetics can play a part into it. So for me, when we started to look at the line, we wanted to make sure that we were addressing different skin focuses. So like concerns. So you'll see we have a range that's called Face for All. And that's really any skin type. Obviously, if you have a sensitivity to, say, strawberries, our brightening cleanser has strawberry seed oil. So maybe that's not the one for you. But really, it's for, the combination skin. Some people who tend to be more acne prone can still use it, etc. So then we have a line that is really dedicated to those who have skin sensitivities. So I'll give you an example. I have normal to combination skin, but I absolutely love the soothing cleanser. So that cleanser is what I'm going to use, but it's formulated for those who have sensitivities or actual true sensitive skin so that they can feel comfortable trying that. Right. Then you have the Clarity line. Clarity is for, let's face it, people who are trying to get to a more clear complexion. And so that's really things that are addressing imperfections, maybe people who tend to have more breakouts, etc. So the way the line is, we have a lot of different, like say we'll have 3 cleansers, but their focus is for different skin concerns. Yeah. So you can just say, wow, I have more sensitive skin. We have 3 products. We have a moisturizer, we have a serum, and we have a cleanser. And that plus the CoQ10 could be all you need.
Right. Exactly.
And so it's kind of addressed like that. And then we have the wellness products and the body products. And that is using aromatherapy. Try saying that 5 times fast, using those practices. And that's the scent pattern that you will have in those products. So for example, the sleep collection, the scent is, vetiver, lavender, lavandulin. So again, you're taking the properties of those botanical extracts to kind of, I would say, give a nod. Like, obviously we have an olfactory gland, and how do we use the time and tried practices of aromatherapy into the products? So,
Okay.
you have 3 different body washes, but there are 3 different scent profiles, depending if you're looking for energize, right?
Right.
Or which might have citrus, or sleep or de-stress, which might have some eucalyptus. So just using those scent profiles for
Right.
those products. So it's a little bit different the way we're looking at it. But I think once you spend some time looking at your line, you're like, oh, that now makes sense. I'm not saying you
Absolutely.
need to
Yeah.
use 50 different products. I just want to make sure that somebody who has, struggled with, maintaining a clear complexion, we're giving them the tools that they can use. If
Yeah.
somebody is like myself, who's, closer to 50,
Yeah.
I'm going to look towards things that are going to boost radiance. And so going to use the products from that line. And so that's kind of how we've broken it out.
Yeah, and I love that, and I also love that you brought up the body care products, because I recently have been like very much geeking out over like the value of aromatherapy in terms of just neural plasticity and just how
Yes.
our brain works. And I
Yes.
found so much research actually that's linking, because for example, like we know a lot about our pituitary gland, and this is very linked to autoimmune diseases. So like
Mm-hmm.
we know about our pituitary gland, we know it, but we know very little about the hypothalamus. So there were some studies, and they're really talking about how there are like there are certain things that are elicited in terms of like smell elicits like
Yeah.
an upregulation of certain hormonal secretions, and you know
Exactly.
what I mean? Yeah,
Exactly. It's
yeah,
fascinating. The
very
science is
fascinating.
so, and for someone who, listen, autoimmune, you're speaking my language. I'm proud to be a member, a board member for the Autoimmune Association, ARDA.
Wow.
My brain tumor was coming off of my hypothalamus. So you and I are right in line, 100%. And, the other thing we've done is really taken this routine and given you 4 steps where you're going to prep your skin. You're going to, perfect your skin. So it's like the cleanser, the toner / exfoliation, then your serums, which are like targeted, and then a moisturizer. We've given you that. So you can say, okay, complete the ritual. Here's 4 steps. You can
Yeah.
buy products that way too. So really trying to make it very user friendly and not so overcomplicated.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, one thing that I want to just point out to everyone listening is that, I know there's a lot of conversation around like clinical trials and, just like medically based research when it comes to skincare. But like one of my biggest arguments, towards my colleagues who are on the other side of it, is that, what do you prefer? A study done on mice, or something that's so organic where a brand is putting out products, and then you have real people reaching out, giving reviews on those products, telling you that this worked for me, this helped clear up my acne, this helped clear up my hyperpigmentation. I value that a lot, you know what I mean, as a medical professional, because
Yeah.
part of our training is you have to listen to the patient. And I think every consumer, there's a patient aspect to every consumer that indulges in
Everybody's
skincare.
different.
Yeah.
100%. Everybody's
Yeah.
different. The way I'm going to react to an ingredient, a product is going to be different than how somebody else does. And I completely agree with you about the, testing on mice. That's why we're cruelty free. I'm like, there are different ways to test ingredients and products these days. It's no longer necessary for us to do trials like that.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, you're absolutely right. That's why we have reviews. Go look at it. Now, there are products like our Eye Awaken Eye Serum where we've had clinicals done, and
Yeah.
we made sure that they were using like tool testing so people understand, okay, is it really doing anything? So we
Right.
had clinicals where, like for our Eye Awaken Eye Serum, 100% of the consumers over 4 weeks saw the tool test, corneometer test, saw an improvement in moisture levels. And so giving people that knowledge. But for me, again, it comes down to personal preference and really looking at how people who have similar skin concerns as you, what are they saying? What are they seeing?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. No, I completely agree. And I think that, just it's beautiful that you guys have such a good range, and that I find it to be very, very inclusive. I think your
Thank you.
skincare line is very inclusive. Yeah. And, that's also a topic I know that comes up a lot in the beauty industry is inclusivity. And, I think skincare is one of those places where it's like, Yeah, inclusivity is just something that is naturally done, right? So it's like, when I look at a line like yours, I'm like, there's something here for everybody. And
Yeah.
that's a beautiful thing. That's something that, it gives you a good feeling to be able to say, oh,
Thank
I
you.
can go onto Indie Lead's website and find exactly what I need,
Thank
and that's
you. And
yeah,
that's
yeah,
so important to me. This was never just meant for products for myself. This was for men, women, trans. This is for, every skin tone. I really wanted people to feel that this was a line that was formulated for them and with them in mind, and realizing that not everybody's skin is the same. So let's do
yeah.
it by concern and focus.
Right. Exactly. And I want to tell this story actually, and I think you'll appreciate it because like, for example, my parents are, they're raised in rural India. So, there's very little medicine like allopathic medicine available on those, on those levels. And so I remember my mother had a story, she had something with her eyes that was happening. I think it was like dryness or, a skin concern, right?
Right.
And at that time, some foolish person, like the village medic or something, gave her something that was actually a pesticide.
Oh my
And she put
gosh.
it on her eyes, and she was so lucky to not like lose her eyesight. And and I think about things like that because I'm like, I've seen what happens when like when there are not options available for small
Yeah,
things. You know what I mean? It can cause a lot of problems. And to be able to live in a world where we do have products like this, I think that's a privilege. That's a huge
I
privilege.
agree.
It's like,
I
you know,
agree.
yeah,
That 100%. I mean, I realize that I'm so lucky to be able to have and put out what we have, and I understand there's the price point. Sometimes it can be more expensive, and that's why we can do sales and things like that.
yeah,
But I agree. We live in a time and a place where there is such a plethora of products out there for every price range, which is
yeah,
so incredible. We are so blessed to be able to have access to all of these different products these days. And that's why I'm always saying it's not my products versus somebody else's. We can all rise with the tide. My personal hope is that people are just going to do the research and read what's in their products, just like they would read what's in their food that they're eating.
exactly. No, I totally agree, and I think that's very logical of you. That's very logical, and I hope that all the consumers out there, all of you listening, like you got to do your research. You got to do
Yeah,
your research. You got to figure out what your body needs, and go with the options that suit you. I mean, if you like you mentioned earlier, if you're allergic to strawberries,
mhm.
don't go buy a cleanser that has strawberry seed oil in it.
That's
You know what I
just
mean?
it.
Like, just yeah.
It's the reason why it's so funny. It's the reason why I've always, said, don't use the word non-toxic. I
Yes.
understand what people are trying to get at, but what's toxic for me might not be toxic for you. So if you're allergic to peanuts and you're eating peanuts, that's
Yep.
toxic.
Exactly.
I don't
Exactly.
have that, so I can go ahead and eat away. But you know what I mean? It's so personal. You cannot put this blanket statement. I mean,
Right.
yes, okay, maybe arsenic, poisonous, but you know what I mean? Like, no,
Right.
toxic, toxic first, not toxic.
Right.
That's another thing where we've got to stop with the fear mongering.
Yeah, and toxicity is that it's a pharmaceutical term that implies a whole different idea than I think what people
Right.
understand.
Absolutely.
You can't just throw words out there. I mean, go if you open a
No.
pharmacy book like a farm book, they're going to tell you exactly what toxicity means. And that's
Exactly.
a
Oh, so
whole
I have
different
my
level.
physician's desk reference behind me. Exactly. So, and I think that's the conversations we need to start having and stop using these terms that
Yeah.
scare people and make them question their choices. And I think we need to be honest about it. And I do think that, listen, I know myself and I know other brands, conventional and clean, we're still getting tests done. Like we have patch tests done and stuff to make sure that you feel comfortable putting it on your skin, etc. So I think there's also that thought that perhaps cleaner or maybe independent beauty brands aren't necessarily having those tests done.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily the case. Now, I can't speak for, every brand, et cetera, but I can speak for mine. I know the amount of stability testing. I know the patch testing that goes in for it to make sure before we ever bring it out that it has been tested for safety.
Right, right. And that's, that's all you can do at this point. There's a lot of and I think that's another point. It's interesting that you say that, because a lot of people are like, well, you know, it's not proven in this way or that way. Well, I'm like, well, the FDA has a lot
Mhm.
of things on their plate. You know what I
Yes,
mean? They're not going to be able to go through every skincare product and be like, this is
absolutely.
approved and this is approved, but they're not
Exactly.
disapproving either. You know what I mean? So
Exactly.
so yeah,
Exactly. The
yeah.
onus is on the brand, really. It's which is very different than Europe, where consumers actually have a say.
Yeah.
If okay, you're not allowed to have that ingredient. There's so many banned, and they'll have to be pulled from the shelf. It's very different here in the U.S., and that's why I want people to be mindful and understand what the process is, so they can make the decisions that they feel the most comfortable with. It's never
Absolutely.
been for me about telling you what you can and cannot, should and should not do. Who am I to say that for
Right.
anybody other than my own self?
Right. Any of us, that applies to all of us. One question I do have though is,
Yeah.
your decision to partner up with Sephora, because that's where I actually really discovered your line with
Uh-huh.
Sephora. And what led to that? Well, how did you decide to go with Sephora, and what all the things that led up to that?
For us, again, it's about allowing our brands I would say giving people availability for those and access to the products. And let's face it, Sephora is fantastic. They have such a wide distribution. And so this allows us to get our products into people's hands that they might not be able necessarily to find. A lot of people like to try a product before they do it. So, making sure we have access to the
Yeah.
public, whether it's here in the US or our, Sephora overseas as well, has been a wonderful partnership where, I don't know that we would have had such wide distribution in Australia and in Singapore and Indonesia and Malaysia. And it's just been incredible that Sephora would take a chance on, an indie brand like mine overseas as well as domestically. So for us, it was really about finding right partners. And this is how we work with all retailers, is making sure it's a great partnership for both sides.
Yeah.
And it's the right fit, and then finding ways to support them as well. So
Yeah.
for us, it
I
was an
love that.
amazing opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great business decision, and I'm so glad, because that's how I discovered you. So, I love Sephora, I love Indie Lee, I love everything about your brand, and I really, really want to say, like, job well done,
Thank
and
you. Oh my
yeah.
gosh, thank you.
No, truly and truly. And, I think, credit needs to be given where it's due. And your line is definitely one that's always stood out to me, in terms of the ingredients, in terms of the packaging, every aspect. I mean, it's just like I said earlier, it's very well crafted. So,
Thank you. I
yeah.
love what I do, and I love the community that we're building as a result. I mean, I've always said for me, part of it was obviously to create this option of a line, but it was also to empower people to go out there and live their healthiest life and be present and be passionate and not be like myself, learning at 37 that it could all be over, and really going out and grabbing life.
Yeah.
And I guess I really do think I'm the luckiest person that I get to do that every day. And, it's not just me. I would never be able to do what we've done without this incredible team that I have that are really my family. So, I
Yeah.
mean, really, the kudos go to them for continuing to support me and my dreams.
I love that. That's so beautiful. I love that.
They're
Yeah.
amazing.
So everyone listening, I know you've already heard of Indie Lee Skincare, but if you have not, I really urge you check them out. Leave us some feedback, some comments. If you have any questions for me or Indie's team, leave them in the comments section. We'd love to hear from you. And yeah, thank you so much for this opportunity. This has been so lovely.
Thank you. I greatly appreciate it. I love talking about this stuff. So, this has been amazing.
We'll have to do it a part 2 then.
I would love
Absolutely.
it. I would absolutely honor that.
Oh, love that. Okay, guys, I will be back next time.